Greetings. This is TK Trav, aka Travis Magus, here with LVX777. The moon in Capricorn, the sun in Libra. That's a formula. As matter is tracked through time, the details let us know what's happening on the plane of consciousness, so to speak. That's why all of time can be traced and has symbols attributed to it. These are formulas. These are the details written in the Akashic records. That's why we're able to use astrology to predict, or at least to trace the flow of how things move. No coincidence that depending on the alignment or what we perceive from the alignment gives us the details on what we can expect to experience, at least on a global scale. Individually, results may vary, but they usually stick to the point. In any case, greetings. Today we're going to cover probably the longest chapter in the mystical Qabalah. And I started a little bit later than usual, but I guess those of you on the West Coast will be just fine. Or perhaps you are not on the West Coast and you're able to stay up all night. Now, I don't think this is going to take all night, but we might be pushing on 4.5 hours. Nothing new, right? We've done it before, and we'll do it again. Peace to everyone who's here. Carmen Wilson, peace. Oye, peace. Anna Molly, peace. Good to see you. Garrett Patterson, peace, brother. Mia Love, welcome, peace. Mo B, peace, peace. I didn't quite see that post just yet, but I saw something about Kobe Bryant. I'll check it out afterwards. Phoenix Wolfette, peace. Dominique, peace. Thank you. Thank you for the donation. I appreciate you. Electric Rose, peace. Matthew Watson, peace, brother. Straight Panther, peace, brother, peace. Nuru, peace, and good to see you. I hope all is well with you. Well, Brazil, peace. Yes, y'all. And you don't stop. So, Tiffareth. Tonight is Tiffareth. And I remember talking about how you can get to these higher planes of consciousness, right? And then you'll be apt to see certain archetypes. And if you don't have a balanced perspective, it's real easy to say, that's me. I have a message for the world. I'm supposed to save the world. Not realizing you're experiencing the very same algorithms and archetypes that affect everybody. So if you're able to get into contact with the Christ consciousness and your internal software isn't completely balanced, aka the vrittis aren't balanced, right? The disharmonic patterns that cause attachment, if those things aren't harmonized, then you're likely to come out of these experiences thinking that it's very personal, when it does affect you, but sometimes it's not specifically what you experience. It's symbolic is what I'm saying. So I had an oracle that I trust. One of our experiences was that she mentioned to me that out of the triad, a lot of the energies that and algorithms that I represent would be that of Vishnu, the preserver, which is also related to Tiffareth. And at the same time, I have a great interest in the tunnels of Set and the Qabalah, always have. And what I've been learning recently is that there's a form of transformation that has to happen when you deal with that type of magic. You literally have to create and don this type of alternate form, a very bestial form, a very grotesque form, a terrible form. There's a reason for that. But in any case, I've always been attracted to Alien and the Xenomorph and that type of ugly. I find it beautiful. And I come to find out just yesterday that there actually is a form of Vishnu that rides upon this terrible beast, right? This terrible beast that has a grotesque form, almost like a dragon, serpent, elephant, crab thing, right? So I'm starting to put these connections together like, yeah, that's my dragon. But we look at Set and we look at the Typhonian current. And how do they describe Set? Essentially, he's described as this creature that there is no earthly resemblance of. In any case, if you can kind of briefly read between the lines, I think I'm starting to see some of the algorithm behind my current stage of study. All right, enough of that. Let's get straight to Tiffareth. Isn't she lovely? Monica Lawan, peace, peace. I mentioned that you have to don a certain bestial form. Well, a big issue, a big problem even with the Cliffoth is that what's a good word? You got to change what you're operating with. You got to change your system completely. You got to go crazy. When you dive into the abyss, you have to you have to remove logic, you have to remove the senses and the things that you're familiar with. You got to think in a very strange, abnormal way. So the problem is coming back to the real world. The problem is when you're finished with those pathworkings, when you're finished with those meditations, you got to rinse that shit off and come back to reality. Otherwise, every time you dip into the abyss, a piece of you stays there. A piece of you stays there. So for those of you interested in that kind of work, or those of you who are undertaking that kind of work, just be aware. Somebody said when you stare into the abyss, it stares back. Didn't Nietzsche say something about in fighting monsters, one must become that he doesn't become a monster himself? Those are all quotes that are very Cliffodic and Dothic, so to speak. Nicole Berkeley, peace. Sly, peace. DB31, peace, brother, peace. All right, so without further ado, I bring you chapter 20, Tiffareth, the sixth sephirah. How's the music? Is it too loud? Let me know. Kazuo Guru, peace. Okay, well, I'm going to turn it down anyways. If it needs to be turned down anymore, just let me know. So let's begin. Let's get it cracking. MC Maestro says, I had a dream I became Batman Beyond and had to traverse the underside of an oil refinery. Batman Beyond came to my mind like 2 nights ago, randomly. So yeah, like I always ask you, what's the metaphor with that? You know, first of all, oil runs the planet, right? Oil money is what makes people wealthy across the globe. Take that into consideration. Also take the fact that oil is literally it's the currency of the underworld, right? It's what is pulled from the unconscious, from the subconscious, to create abundance in the conscious, right? So from underground to above ground, this is the very black substance of the abyss, right? Brought across to chesed. Oil is chthonic, right? It comes from the underworld. It comes from the deep past, from the abyss. It is what has remained from eons ago. Oil is the substance that is gathered from a time so distant that we don't even know what the hell it is. We say that it's what do we say it is? We say that it's dinosaurs and shit who have decomposed and died and become fossil fuel, or whatever these people say. We don't know. But the very story and metaphor for that alone is showing that that's something that's coming from a past so far gone that it might as well, it is the clip off. That is the clip off juice right there. And of course, you know more about Batman Beyond than I do. MC Meister says, I had to take on a darker form to traverse the underworld since it's a different playing field. Exactly, my friend, exactly. And I think one of the reasons that Dion Fortune and many other teachers are mentioned to really stay out of that stuff if you're not an experienced or seasoned occultist, or hell, stay out of it at all. The reason they say that is because you have to take on that different form, like you said. But then there's the trouble of coming back. If you don't shake it off, you start to become something different because you're going to a place that doesn't exist anymore. Imagine being able to travel to another world. Wasn't there like a Rip Van Winkle, a dude who fell asleep and went to the fairy kingdom forever, and then he came back and he was an old man, right? This is what the clip-off is like. You're going to a dimension that is so alien that you have to become alien. And when you come back, the stench of the abyss is still on you. And this is what happens when we say that people have gone crazy or lost their mind. This is what happened with Crowley. This is what happened with Crowley. The deeper you go, the more distant you get from today, which means that when you come back, you bring some of that back. I hope you get the point that I'm making here. You got to be able to shake that stuff off. You have to push yourself to the brink of insanity to be able to experience those planes. But don't take my word for it. Read some of those Typhonian trilogies. Symbiote. Okay, so Tiffareth, chapter 20. Sirius Suit 888. Peace, my brother, peace. I hope you're having a good day. So, the title of Tiffareth is Beauty. The magical image is a majestic king, a child, a sacrificed god. Majestic king, a child, a sacrificed god. And of course, he's going to break the stuff down so perfectly. Dominic Stevenson asks, what are the benefits of experiencing these planes? Well, for most people, there is no benefit to messing in the clip-off. There's no benefit. Because of consciously and metaphysically where the abyss and the clip-off is located, it is just outside the brink of our reality, so to speak, right? The terms to describe this shit starts to get so abstract. But the clip-off is a place that is just beyond everything that we're used to. So the abyss and the area where Doth is can be considered a gateway to other realities. And 99.9999% of those realities have nothing to do with the one that we exist in. Yet, it is from the abyss that people bring in the ideas that transform this reality, right? So everyone who, like I always say, look at CEOs or business creators, or, look at Steve Jobs with Apple. He transformed this reality because he pulled across the abyss the idea of Apple and iPhone and iMusic and all that. So now, if you have a phone, there's a huge chance you're on an iPhone. There's an even bigger chance that you are using or associated with Apple products at all. Or even Amazon revolutionized the way that we receive and buy stuff. Or Uber Eats. Or hell, even the NBA, right? Somebody had to create a league for people to play basketball and get rich off of and make a living, right? Anyone who's ever created something new that this world has never seen before, those type of things are pulled across the abyss. Now, the thing about the Qliphoth is not only are there, the thing about the abyss is that not only are there ideas that can be useful, there's also ideas that are so far away. We're talking about the history of existence. So there are some things that are so deep in the history of existence that they literally do not serve a purpose in this reality. And they can be disturbing to experience, right? We're talking about realities that are upside down, inside out, backwards, and qualities that we don't even have words for. Now, if you're the type of soul that can maintain its frame, maybe if you dig through that, you can find something useful. It's like taking a risk to going into a cave to find gold because you heard that there's gold and diamonds in there, but knowing damn well that most people don't come out of that cave. That's what it's like. So I hope that answers your question, Dominique Stevenson. MC Maestro says it's a gateway to things that some consider to be unnatural. Exactly. Chloe Nisi says, second time hearing this type of information. I'm only on chapter 7. Wish I could speed read, but it's nice taking my time. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I had a deep dive the other night. It took me a long ass time to come back, if I came back. Straight Panther 79 said it has to resemble the best and worst mushroom trip. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And here's the thing, man. Like, if you've ever had a bad trip, you know what that feels like. Well, this kind of path working, you can I have induced those same feelings, but completely sober. Like, this last one, I had to go take a damn shower to get that shit off of me. As Dion Fortune says in the back of this book about Doth and the Qliphoth, is that you can experience very strange vibrations that can be disruptive to human consciousness. She ain't playing. Sirius Su 888 says, I feel like we can evaluate that to antimatter. Ooh. Dominique Stevens says, I feel like an artist of any kind could benefit from this. And many artists have, and many artists have not come back from it. We can look at someone like Salvador Dali. You can tell when somebody's been there. You can tell when somebody's bringing some shit from there. Matter of fact, the dude H.R. Geiger, who even created this concept, if you look at the work of H.R. Geiger, he's been there. That shit doesn't make any sense, and it touches you on a level that's so deep, it's familiar, but it's unfamiliar, right? And not just because it's monsters and stuff, because like I said, Salvador Dali, there's another Polish artist, and I've never had to say his name out loud, but he makes a lot of art that can be seen as disturbing, but like it's not necessarily grotesque. Who else? Certain artists who have these creations that are just so weird, but they have this strange familiarity about them. Sirius 888 says that music earlier was very similar. Yes, and that's the kind of music I use to focus on to work with that type of stuff. By the way, if you're interested, that type of music is called microtonal music, and oh my gosh, that is extremely Qliphothic. That's my first. One of my first real experiences with this type of energy. And I say it's extremely Qliphotic because when you think about music, especially what we're used to, we usually deal with about 12 notes. And if you look at a piano, you got C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G. You know what I'm saying? You've got like a certain number of notes, and then they repeat. Well, those notes, you got a string, and you got a vibration that goes across that string. Straight Panther says Lovecraft, Jack Kirby, Clive Barker. Yes, sir. So you can smell the abyss on them. You can smell the abyss on that work. You get what I'm saying? Especially Lovecraft, especially Clive Barker and Hellraiser and that whole Leviathan hell dimension. Yes, sir. But anyways, every note is like on a string, and when the hammer of the piano hits that string, the wavelength is a certain length, right? So we call that C or D or E. Now, even if it's high C or low C, the wavelength is the same shape. It's just longer or shorter. But check this out. There are infinite number of notes in between C and D. Hell, there's an infinite number of notes between C and C sharp. But the thing is, they're not useful to the musical scales that we use. They're not useful to our ears. So some of them can sound very discordant. And the reason that music sounds beautiful is because it's mathematic. A chord between, like, say, C and F and A or whatever, it's harmonious to a degree, right? It makes sense. It's harmonious to a degree. So different chords make different synthesis that makes sense to what we're used to. It sounds pleasant. But when you're dealing with a scale that's not just those 12 notes, but say 24 notes or 75 notes, now you've opened up the piano to so many different notes. Some of those songs have notes that human beings have never heard before. You'll easily run into music with notes that you have literally never heard in all your life. And see, those numbers, those notes, they've been thrown away, they've been discarded, they've been buried. Just like if you have a red crayon and an orange crayon, there's infinite colors in between there. And to the average person, that's useless, right? You just need a red and an orange and maybe a green. But someone who's a more refined artist who likes to dive a little bit deeper and has maybe bigger concepts or different concepts, they can benefit from those in-between notes. Lovecraft talked about these in-between spaces and in-between dimensions and strange angles and shit like that. This is what he's referring to. So check out Microtonal music if you're interested in hearing that. I think I got a playlist. I got recommendations too if you want some examples. Matter of fact, that last video, I posted the link to that music in the video in the comments. But come on now, we didn't even touch Tiffareth now. I guess I'm just so excited about the work that I've been doing, and I haven't been on here in a while, so vroom, vroom, vroom. Nuru says Jean-Michel Basquiat and the Voodoo Child himself, Jimi Hendrix. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes. Straight Panther says Sun Ra, definitely. So see, yeah, you guys know what I'm talking about. You can smell the abyss on these people. You can smell the abyss on their artwork. That's what I'm talking about. Not somebody who tries to be spooky or tries to be different. It is effortless with these folks. They can't help it because it's all. That's what I mean when you dive into this place. It sticks to you, and that's why teachers like Dion Fortune says be careful with it, because it won't take very many visits before you're completely transformed. Okay, so that was my breakdown of the cliff off. Now let's get to Tiffareth. Tio says, I'm a producer and like you skip over those infinite notes. Makes sense that the main chords we use are more mathematic. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I did use some microtonal notes with some of my music, because there actually is because you know how you can program the MIDI controller, you can program what scale your piano is. There are ways that you can program your keyboard to play microtonal music, but you'd probably have to be some kind of nerd to figure that out. Azrael Walker, peace. All right, let's get to it, y'all. Let's get to it. I got a couple of tarot cards I'm gonna break down, and even some that you may not have expected. I mean, obviously, Tiffareth is the number 6. So what would the devil card have to do with it? Let's find out. Tiffareth means beauty, magical image, a majestic king, right? We got the emperor card right there. A child, we got the sun card right there. A sacrificed god, we got the hanged man card right there. But I didn't pull those because that would have been, I thought that might have been a bit too far. But yeah, the emperor, the sun card, and guess what? Tiffareth is the sun. And then the hanged man. Situation on the tree is in the center of the pillar of equilibrium. Everybody here knows where Tiffareth is, right? Good. Yetzeretic text. The 6th path is called the mediating intelligence because in it are multiplied the influxes of the emanations. For it causes that influence to flow into all the reservoirs of the blessings with which they themselves are united. Titles given to Tiffareth: Zaire and Pen, the lesser countenance; Melech, the king; Adam, the son; the man. God name: Tetragrammaton Eloah Va Da'ath. Archangel: Raphael, healing of God. Depending on what system you're working with, sometimes you'll see this as Mikael. I like to use Mikael in association with Tiffareth. So you'll ask, okay, well, where would Mikael be? Sometimes Mikael is associated with Hod, right? So between Hod and Tiffareth, you'll see that these two archangels are exchanged. This actually happens a few times on the tree, depending on the system you follow. For some people, the 28th path is swapped out. In some cases, we see it as the star. In other cases, we see it as the emperor. So that's one example of swapping out on the tree. And another example is Dion Fortin said this was Raphael and this is Mikael, but the system I use says this is Mikael and this is Raphael. And to be honest, this is connected with what we just talked about as far as the in-between stuff, because there are other schools of thought that have completely different attributions of the cards. There's even some systems that has an extra 2 paths from here to here and here to here, and they associate the Greek alphabet with these paths. So none of this is set in stone. It's about the relationships, okay? The Fool card was not created to be the 11th path. But in the whole system of these cards, it makes sense. In the whole system, it can be related with this path. So don't get hung up or confused or even upset if you see something that's slightly different from what you're used to. Sirius 2888 says, does Tiffareth have a breakdown to 3? I think it would. It absolutely does have a connection with 3. But don't deny 6 its value. The 6 has its own value, but it does connect to 3. And as a matter of fact, that's why I pulled out this card. Okay, this is the connection between 3 and 6, between Tiffareth and Binah. And you'll notice there's a sun in the background, male and female at the foreground, which would be Hakma Binah. Notice that cloud in the middle where that mediating intelligence is, right? 6th path is called the mediating intelligence because in it are multiplied the influxes of the emanations, for it causes that influence to fall into all the reservoirs of the blessings with which they themselves are united, right? So you see those clouds right there. The clouds represent a black hole. If you see clouds on the Rider White deck and something coming out of them, that's symbolic of a black hole. You heard it here first, people. The abyss, Doth, represents a black hole because you're covering a distance of time and or space that is so extremely vast and deep that a human consciousness cannot cross it and still maintain its frame. Now, something like an angel or anything that's coming from the supernal triad, they can cross that distance. But whenever you see those clouds and something coming out of it, it's coming from a place and a time so far away that they might as well just use a black hole to show them coming out of it. But anyways, this is the path between Binah and Tiffareth. And Binah and Tiffareth, that path, it crosses the abyss. So you got Hakma and Binah, you got Doth, and then you got Tiffareth. They must come into union. They must reach the holy peak, the holy mountain. Look, and the woman is closer to it than the man is. That's very symbolic. Now, you know what other card relates to Tiffareth? This one. Because while this is on the verge and the border of the unmanifest, oh, this is very deep in the manifest. This is deep in the manifest. There is no abyss here. They're connected to something very close to home. Very close to home. Now you notice the 5 on top of his head? What sephirot is associated with 5? That would be Gibarah. Now what path is the devil card associated with? It's associated with the path between Hod and Tiffareth. Tiffareth. So above this path, you'll find that 5. Justice for the hanged man. But anyways, the number of that path is 15, and 5 plus 1 is 6. Alright, so 5 plus 1 is 6. That's why this one has a very strong Tiffareth energy. The number here is actually 6 Tiffareth energy. The path of the Emperor is actually the 15th path, so 5 plus 1 is 6. And of course, one of the images of Tiffareth is the majestic king, not to mention Aries, I believe is associated with. I know all this other stuff, but like the simple shit stumps me. What planet is Aries associated with? Is it Mars or is it the sun? I forget. Leo is the sun, so I think Aries is Mars. So that's probably where the red comes from. And of course, the path of the death card is 24. So 2 and 4 make 6. Again, notice the sun in the background. Notice the sun in the background and also those 2 pillars. And we learned from the moon card that those 2 pillars represent the astral plane. So the death card is connecting Tiffareth to Netzach. Right there. 4 and 2, that makes 6. That's why it's connected to Tiffareth, the 6s. So those are 4 cards right there that are associated with that specific path. And no coincidence that they actually all touch Tiffareth. Right? The Lovers, the Devil card, Death, and the Emperor. Right? And they look at the angles that they touch it at. Man. Let's keep going. Oh boy. Hollow Vegeta says, yo, Sirius, Betelgeuse, and Mars are aligned. If anyone looks, I don't see anybody speaking on it. Well, shit, man, that's probably why it's so easy right now to jump into the abyss. Better get in while you still can. Because when these alignments change, the experience is different. And I don't know what made it so easy for me this time, but it ain't never been this easy. All right, I know this is a lot of information, and for most people, this is not really useful. But for those of you that it is useful for, I hope that it is useful for you. Naturally natured, peace. Been thinking about you. I hope you're still reading Outside the Circles of Time, because there's some information in that book that is life-changing. I even started writing a summary to each chapter, just so that I can keep up with what the hell I'm reading. But Naturally Natured, I hope you did not give up on that book, because I need somebody to talk to about it. All right, let's see, where are we? All right, the healing of God, Raphael. The order of angels, Malachim, kings. I keep seeing the name Malik and Malachi and Malachim. Like, I keep seeing this repeatedly. Mundane chakra, Shamesh, the sun. Spiritual experience is the vision of the harmony of things, the mysteries of the crucifixion. The virtue is the devotion to the great work. The vice is pride. Correspondence in the microcosm, the breast. We could also say the heart. Because specifically, we could say that the sign of Cancer represents the breast and Leo represents the heart. So yeah, just keep in mind it's the heart as well. Because if you look at where Tiffareth is on the tree, a lot of paths are connected to it, and damn near every sephirot is connected to Tiffareth. Symbols: the layman, the rose cross, the Calvary cross, the truncated pyramid, the cube. The tarot cards, the 4 6s. So the 6 of Wands means victory. The The Six of Cups means joy. The Six of Swords, earned success. And the Six of Pentacles, material success. So again, notice how we've got a high figure dispensing and giving. This is the effect of Tiffareth in the world of Asaya. See, you see the scales of balance there? Not only does that represent the Justice card, but that also represents the Strength path, which is the balance between Gibura and Chesed. Tiffareth is the balance between the Mars and the Jupiter sephirah. And from that balance comes a certain type of authority. This is the beloved king. This is the Vishnu king. This is the Christ king. This is the king that people love. Not quite at war, not quite at peace. But this is the king that dwells among the people. So he's not like looking down on them like, oh, I'm better than you. He's achieved something great due to his harmony, and he's able to give. Well, that's the experience of Tiffareth in the world of Asaya. But just to go back, Tiffareth in the world of Atziluth, we call that victory. Victory, man, victory. To being able to cross all the dimensions of matter and still keep it together. These wands represent the power that pushes forward, right? The power of Chakma, the power of expression, existence. I exist, I am. That's standing straight up, that upright rod, right? The pillar of power, penetrating through every dimension and still keeping it together. That's the experience of Tiffareth in Atziluth. We got Tiffareth in Bria. Notice again, we've got the giving here. The giving. Again, we've got somebody that is a little bit bigger, giving to somebody smaller. And honestly, I did a reading for someone a few days ago, and she pointed out that these actually look like adults. So, look at that giant. If somebody's very versed in the clip-off, tell me who is associated with the Tiffareth, the clip-off of Tiffareth. But anyways, notice the giving here. Notice the giving, and pay attention also to these cups. They've got flowers with 5 petals, and what do the 5s represent? They represent Gibura. And notice where Gibura is on the tree on the left side. In order to death. The path between Gibura and Netzach is death. 5 represents Mars, represents radical change, as we see in the Tower card. Radical change. So whatever this gift is, it's life-changing. But see, notice how abundant this gift actually is. It's all over the place. It's nothing like special. It's everywhere. Hell, she could probably get it herself. But there's something about this exchange that transformed her life. She ain't even looking at the flowers. She's looking at him. Or this figure. This is the experience of Tiffareth in the world of Bria. Transmutation, exchange of something that seems mundane, but is actually quite volatile. Now, I say that because, as Dion Fortune says, the supernatural has to happen through natural means. So it isn't the flowers themselves, it's what's behind it's the energy of this transaction here. That's what's life-changing. That's what's happening in the world of Bria, dealing with Tiffareth. So in Tiffareth in the world of Yetzirah is usually a pretty stormy place. Yetzirah is a very turbulent place. So oftentimes, if you see the swords, most of these cards are not very happy. Not very happy. So the experience of Tiffareth in Yetzirah this says earned success. But who here looks happy about that success? This might even be the type of success where your city was bombed to ashes and you're the only 3 people to escape, right? Somebody once said that this could even be the crossing of the river Styx, going to or from the underworld. Maybe they're coming from the underworld. Maybe they just went to go visit the dead parent
of this child, you know. See, this dude has success because he's got the job of being able to cross dimensions, right? Because again, notice that recurring theme, being able to cross dimensions. When it comes to the river Styx, we're dealing with going from the land of the living to the land of the dead. Now, this fellow here is the ferryman who is able to take people across the river from the land of the living to the land of the dead. He's got an earned success in that, nobody notices this, but even he's defied death. Not only is he able to travel across, he himself knows this territory very well. He's called a psychopomp. Jesus Christ is called a psychopomp. Tahuti is called a psychopomp. Mikael is a psychopomp. And Raphael too. What is a psychopomp? Does anybody know what a psychopomp is? A psychopomp is someone who has the job and the task to carry someone into the underworld. So notice the theme with all these sixes. We've got a transaction taking place. In Absolute, in Asaya and the lower world, the transaction is monetary. And those gold coins are changing this person's life. The fact that they have to be on their knees begging for these coins means that they don't have it and they need it, right? Most people don't get on their knees and beg somebody for something unless they really mean it or unless they enjoy it. But this exchange is life-changing. It's just matter, it's just material, but it's life-changing, right? This exchange, like we said, victory, this has to do with, we made it. We made it. Congratulations. Worked so hard, forgot how to vacation. They don't understand the dedication. People hating, say we changing, but we made it. Yeah, we made it. They was never friendly. Yeah, now I'm jumping out the Bentley. Right? So the exchange here is actually making it across and being fluent in making it across in general. Transaction here, love, 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 love. Transaction here, going from one plane of existence to another, but it's not rainbow farts and sunshines. And then of course this exchange here. All right, let's continue. Atropa points out something pretty cool. She says, if you notice, the water on one side is choppy and the other side the water is calm. That's a good observation right there. So yes, we're definitely looking at the fact that there's two different realities, one boat. So Tiffareth can be seen as the point where light becomes matter, the point where something is transformed into the next state. That's the sacrifice aspect. So that's why Christ is a symbol of Tiffareth, and he's got the sacrifice on the cross. What that actually means is that's the point where light becomes matter, or matter becomes light again. There's a transmutation of states, and that's why we're talking about going to the path on the chapter of Tiffareth, because the same process is happening there. X gonna give it to you. Naturally Nature says, oh my God, it's in my hand right now. Been reading it today. I picked it up out of the blue today as my daily read. Oh yeah. I must have, I don't know. Maybe one of us radioed each other about it. Whoa. Okay, guys, so like I said, this is a long chapter, but there's so much. We didn't even get to it yet. I hope you don't mind. This is going to be a long video, but it's going to be full of relevant, useful information to someone who works with this type of thing. Nehru says each of these spinning trees of light, from DNA to the galaxy and beyond, are all embedded in a higher, more complex tree of light. When you ascend to the highest tree, you You find you're back in your DNA. Holy cow. There's that fractal. There's that hologram. Sirius Who AAA says that card is also talking about the Fool on the Journey. Which one? Are you talking about this one? Scott Russell says, nice, just finished this chapter today. Long chapter, I'm here for it. Awesome, awesome. Nero says, when you travel as light, there's no linear reality, no linear time, no linear space limitations. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. Light becomes matter, matter becomes light. See, that sounds like some abyss talk right there. Einstein and Tesla, I believe, are two who have also traveled to those areas of darkness and were able to maintain their frame to some degree. You can't help but be a little bit weird when you go into those places. Well, then again, you got to be a little bit weird to get there in the first place. So, all right, here we go. Finally, the color in Absoluth is clear rose pink. The color in Bria is yellow. The color in Yetzirah is rich salmon pink. And the color in Asaya is golden amber. In my deep dive into the terrible places, I saw the reasoning for these colors, man. I saw why and how the colors work, and it's difficult to explain. But essentially, just know that each of these colors, as they descend in density, it gets darker and it begins to shift. It shifts because we're seeing it through a lens, basically. And at the most high level, right, the Kether of Yetzirah, it is a brilliant white that can't even be broken down. It's just pure light, limitless light. But every path and every sephirah is a slight degradation of that light. So it begins to get darker and darker. And here's the thing. What we're looking at here is the white light of the place we call Kether, or depending on what side of the ocean you're from, we might be talking about it's called Purusha. But in any case, it is still this white light. And this is why they say there's a tree in every sephirah, and there's a Kether in every sephirah, etc., etc. Because this white light can only be experienced in space and in time, it has to degrade itself or minimize itself. We can only experience it from one angle because we are manifest within it. Because we exist, we can only see it from one angle. What's a good way to say that? You can't see your room from outside the room because you're in the room. So because we're in the room, we can only see one slice of this white. So when the white needs to be gray, that's what we see here. When it needs to be black, that's what we see. When you shine a white light through a prism, it comes out as every other color: red, blue, yellow, green, orange, purple, right? So depending on what angle of consciousness that is our perspective, that's how we see Kether. And likewise, these paths are also different slices of the light. Now, the light is all experience, every single kind of experience that can be imagined, but we don't have the equipment to experience it in its natural state. We can only experience it in a piece. So each path and each sephirah is a piece of the light. And once you undergo an experience with every piece, you are able to connect that light that is already within your own unconscious mind. You're able to connect it with an external symbol, thus building the tree within your own reality. In other words, you read about this stuff and then you find a real life experience of this stuff that you can relate to, and then you pin the tail on the donkey. You attach that to the tree so that it makes sense for you specifically. Niru says when you're in the dark, you can take a flashlight and flash the light on everything except the flashlight. Precisely. Dave and Birdie, peace. Anna Molly says MC Escher's drawing with the stairs going 3 different directions. And see, I think that's another artist who's been touched by the abyss. And notice a lot of these artists that we named are surreal type of artists, or artists who have inspiration from surrealism. One, there are three important keys to the nature of Tiffareth. Firstly, it is the center of equilibrium of the whole tree, being in the middle of the central pillar. Secondly, it is Kether on a lower arc, and Yesod on a higher arc. Thirdly, it is the point of transmutation between the planes of force and form. Big key right there. So number one is in the center of the tree. It's in the very middle. Number two, Tiffareth is Kether on a lower arc and Yesod on a higher arc. And number three is the point of transmutation between the planes of force and the planes of form. Got it? The titles that are bestowed on it in Kabbalistic nomenclature bear this out. From the point of view of Kether, it is a child. From the point of view of Malkuth, it is a king. And from the point of view of the transmutation of force, it is a sacrificed god. Boom. Mic drop. That's all you need to know about Tiffareth. Like, study that first verse and memorize what it means. That right there. That answers all the symbology. And I need to find a picture of the tree that I can use. Here we go. I'll use this picture. All right, so like she said, three things to know about Tiffareth. Number one, Tiffareth is in the very middle. It's in the very middle of this tree. Number two, Tiffareth is Kether on a lower end, and it's Yesod on a higher end, right? So Tiffareth is, like, once you can only get to the Father through me, right? Once you've seen me, you've seen God, right? Christ is an avatar of this place. So, and the other thing that she said was that there's a transmutation of force and form to go from the pure reality of pure consciousness down into the world of form. There has to be a crossing, not just of the abyss, but there's at least 4 abysses that have to be crossed, right? You got to cross the abyss here, you got to cross the abyss here, you got to cross the abyss here, and you have to cross the abyss here, which is the space between you falling asleep. Those are 4 levels where force has to be transmuted into form. So the things that you see in your daily life and the things that you see in your dreams and your imaginations, they're a symbol of a deeper concept. Nothing you see with your eyes or your third eye is what it actually is. It's a representation. Never forget that. Never forget that. Somebody might come to you in a dream with a message. That's not what it actually is. That's a symbolic representation of what it is. Don't forget that. Because if you received it in a dream, it already had to cross 1, 2, 3 barriers to get to you. Long story short, understand this if you want to understand Tiffareth. This is a long chapter, but literally that right there is the point. Number 2, macrocosmically, that is to say, from the Kether standpoint. And another thing. If you're looking from the point of view of Kether, Tiffareth is a child. But if you're looking from the point of view of Malkuth, Tiffareth is a king. Hence why you've got a symbol here of baby Jesus, Jesus ruling on a throne, and the Christ figure sacrificed. Baby Jesus to Kether, King Jesus to Malkuth, and the sacrificed God when it comes to the light coming down the tree into the manifest dimension. Sirius Sutra 888 says every state of the 12 signs has those 4 attributes. All right, you guys learning something? Or does this just sound like a madman's gibberish? Because when I get excited, I can't tell the difference. It all sounds the same to me. All right, number 2. Macrocosmically, that is to say from the Kether standpoint, Tiffareth is the equilibrium of Chesed and Geburah. All right, now remember what I said. He's holding that balance, that scale. You see him holding that scale? That's the balance of mercy and severity. You've heard that the 2 pillars are called mercy and severity. Geburah, Chesed. We already read about those 2 chapters. Geburah, the archangel's called the burner of God. That's when it's time to slice what is unnecessary away, trimming the fat. Geburah. Chesed is on the other side of that. Abundance, proliferation. Everything, everywhere, all the time. All at once. Now that's good, but it can also be very bad. So it's not about good and bad. It's about the application. It's about the context. So positive, increase, negative, decrease. There's got to be a balance there. Now right there, you'll actually see the strength card. Right? The path associated with that balance between Geburah and Chesed is the strength card. So when you see Tiffareth in the world of Asaya, right? Asaya, he's holding that balance, strength. It takes strength to be able to do that. The balance between abundance and limitation. And with that balance on his heart, on his mind, on his soul, he knows who and what to give for it to be fair. Not because I like you, or I don't like you, or you flatter me. No. Giving irregardless of what you feel about the situation. And by the way, notice the 3 colors. Red, blue, and yellow. We talked about this before. Macrocosmically, that is to say from the Kether standpoint, Tiffareth is the equilibrium of Chesed and Geburah. That's what I just said. Microcosmically, that is to say from the point of view from the transcendental psychology, it is the point where the types of consciousness characteristic to Kether and Yesod are brought into focus. So the types of consciousness from Kether and Yesod, right? There's a balance right there. Now, what type of consciousness do you think is coming from Kether? What type of consciousness you think is happening in Yesod? That's why the Christ energy is the way, the truth, and the light. Because the Christ is the mediator between the God that is beyond our experience, somewhere out there that we can never, ever, ever have direct contact with, at least not in this form. And then the God that is extremely close to us that we don't even see him because it's our imagination. Lucifer, son of the morning, I'm gonna chase you out of earth. The Christ represents the pathway in between those 2 things. And then he said, Hod and Netzach equally find their synthesis in Tiffareth. So Tiffareth is truly, truly the synthesis of all the different spheres. And I can't talk about those others without talking about Hod and Netzach. But essentially, we've got the excruciating breakdown of detail of the science and the study of a thing, and then the expanded, abundant enjoyment of beauty and art and just celebrating things that are nice to celebrate. Those 2 are balanced with Tiffareth. So check this out now. She left something out. The same way that Kether and Yesod are balanced in Tiffareth by types of consciousness, the same way that Hod and Netzach are balanced in Tiffareth by study and practice, the same way that Geburah and Chesed are balanced in Tiffareth by abundance and limitation. Are we missing a pair? Are we missing a pair? Well, absolutely we are. Tiffareth is also a balance between Chakma and Bina. And in what way? Mother and father create the child. Tiffareth is the harmony between the masculine and the feminine. Cool. It's the baby. It is the Horus to the Isis and the Osiris, Osset. The next step, that which proceeds from the past into the future. child of tomorrow. Number 3, the 6 sephirah, of which Tiffareth is the center, are sometimes called Adam Kadmon, the archetypal man. In fact, Tiffareth cannot rightly be understood, save as the central point about these 6, wherein it rules as a king in his kingdom. It is these 6 which, for all practical purposes, constitute the archetypal kingdom, which lies behind the kingdom of form in Malkuth, and completely dominates and determines the passivities of matter. Right? So Tiffareth represents the king within his kingdom. All right? Because it is the central point of these 6 spheres. What are you talking about, Trav? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right? Tiffareth represents the balance and the harmony of this kingdom here. And all this kingdom is compressed into the 32nd path and squeezed out into Malkuth. I think it was Brother Panic that called Malkuth the turd or the dingleberry of the tree. But anyways, that 32nd path, all of the influences and forces of this whole tree is squeezed out and pushed into Malkuth, and Malkuth gets the after effect of it. So nothing that you see into this material plane is the beginning, and nothing you see in the material plane is what it actually is. You're seeing the face of something deeper. Adam Kadmon, the father, the bride. Oh boy. All right. 1 hour later, second page. Sunshine Chick. Peace, peace. Sirius 2 888 says, wouldn't Doth be the sacrifice god, the one that found the diamond, and mastered in the abyss? Well, that's the thing. The diamond actually is Tiffareth. The diamond in the abyss was Tiffareth. To find that diamond is to find your way out of the abyss. Sunshine Chick says, I was watching a video on YouTube. A Hasidic Jew was talking about the synthesis of lunar energy, wife, and her husband, solar energy. It is the yearning of the lunar energy that can bring forth the solar energy. Yes, yes. Number 4. When we have to consider a sephirah in relation to its neighbors in order to interpret in the light of its position on the tree, it is not possible to proceed with an entirely systematic and orderly exposition of the Kabbalistic system. For we must, of necessity, forestall with partial explanations if our argument is to be comprehensible. We must therefore give some explanation of the 3 lower sephirah grouped around Tiffareth, Netzach, Hod, and Yesod. Bam, bam, and bam. Basically what she's saying is, I'm going to break some of this stuff down to you. I don't want you to just take my word for it. I'm going to give you as much evidence as I can conceptually so that what I'm saying here makes sense and you're not just agreeing with me. That's what she's saying right there. Omni Arlandria, peace and welcome. Number 5, Netzach is concerned with the nature forces and elemental contacts. Right here. Netzach, Hod, and Yesod. Venus, Mercury, Moon. Okay. Netzach is concerned with the nature forces and elemental contacts. Hod with ceremonial magic and occult knowledge. And Yesod with psychism and the etheric double. Tiffareth itself, supported by Gibra and Gidrila, represents seership, or the higher psychism of individuality. Each sephirah, of course, has its subjective and objective aspects, its factor in psychology, and its plane in the universe. In the beginning of this video, I talked a lot about the clip-off and the abyss and having to take on a dark form in order to travel in those waters. You're not going to travel in those waters as a human image, because that's food there. Likewise, she mentioned that Tiffareth represents higher psychism, right? Yesod represents lower psychism in the etheric double. So hopefully you've done some work with your etheric body, with your etheric self. Because when you're dealing with the Tiffareth self, this is the self that is actually used to build the platform of that which crosses the abyss, right? There's only something very, very, very diminished that is able to travel across that abyss. And if you haven't developed a sensitivity for what that is, of course you're going to get lost in that space. And I mean completely lost. Because here's the thing, you got to think. Kether is everything that can be possibly imagined. Yet what makes it across Doth is only a tiny, tiny slice of reality. A tiny slice of reality. Which means that when going back across this gateway, only a tiny, 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 tiny slice of whatever the hell you think you are is going to make it across. Everything else will become dissolved. And I mean that, dissolved. Why? Because the abyss represents a accumulation of time and space that is so incredibly vast that you will not survive across it. Here's an example. Space travel is an example of a Doth type of experience. They say it takes 60 years to get to Mars, right? Now, while 60 years is fathomable, that's a human lifetime or whatever. And I may be wrong, I don't care, but think of the context that I'm saying here. They say that it takes so long to get across from one planet to another. The distance is so vast that it's a human lifetime just about. So if you were to train as an astronaut for God knows how many years, get on a spaceship and fly to Mars, you think you're going to survive that journey? No, you're not finna sit down on a spaceship and survive a 60-year journey. Because the body will begin to deteriorate, but not before the mind begins to deteriorate. The emotions begin to everything about the human begins to deteriorate. Now, if that human was able to survive that journey and make it to Mars, what do you think is going to step out of that spaceship? If the desire to step out even still exists. That's what I'm talking about. Being able to traverse such a long journey, right? That's a lot of space that has to be crossed. It begins to deteriorate the vehicle. So just imagine how far away it is between Bina and Chesed. We're talking about a distance that's farther than the history of our universe, right? Billions of years. Think about the Jurassic Age. Think about dinosaurs, when dinosaurs were existing, right? So you can look back in time and you can think, oh, yesterday I did this, right? And it's pretty clear in your memory. Or you can think 5 years ago, yeah, life was like this. You can maybe think 20 years ago, or maybe you can think 50 years ago by looking at video clips and history books. Okay, well, that happened 50 years ago, 60 years ago. And you keep looking back 100 years ago, what was life like? Notice that the further back you project your consciousness, the details are lost and fuzzy, right? Because you have no personal connection to those times, right? So think about what life was like 200 years ago. Hell if I know. 800 years ago. 1,000 years ago. We don't know. All we can work off of is a few documents and paintings and literature that we haven't even read ourselves, but other people read for us, right? We don't know. Not to mention stuff that could be lost in translation. So if that's a difficult thing to cross, if that's an abyss to cross, right? You think about the dinosaur age, if that actually happened. How far back does your mind have to travel? And what survives? You're gonna see yourself as a person walking around a planet full of gigantic lizards? No. That's just not going to cut it. So when we're talking about the abyss and we're talking about Doth, we're talking about crossing time and space of a vast magnitude that by the time you make it there, nothing is left that makes sense. That's what's happening with the Qlipoth. That's what I mean when I say you have to take on a monstrous form, because it's alien territory. What you reach is not going to be what you're used to. Good stuff, good stuff. Always Chosen One says, a teacher that actually teaches and gives homework. Peace. Yes. Animali says, my favorite emoji. Straight Panther says, cosmic poop, right? Yamaika says, is there a such thing as a true history buff? I mean, I don't know. Everything is true, nothing is permitted is what they say. And from what I know is, I know how easily statistics and information can be manipulated. And I know that there are agendas behind such manipulation. So I trust what I can verify and what I care to verify. I've seen equal evidence that shows that dinosaurs and all that stuff was not a reality. I've also seen things that put up a very good argument that the planets are not gigantic spheres floating in the sky. I've seen evidence that, the past 600 years were not what is told to us. I've seen evidence for all kinds of things. So I don't jump on board to believe one thing or another. I just kind of let the realities exist as possibilities in my mind and keep it pushing. The Earth could be flat. It could be under a dome. It could be shaped like a pear or a donut. I'm not saying no to any of it. I've seen arguments for all those cases. Now, I care to the degree that it affects my life. Whether the Earth is flat or round or square, it doesn't really have an impact on my day-to-day process. So I leave it there. It's interesting, right? But my life is not going to change if they got on the news and said that the Earth is flat. It's not going to change. It's interesting, though. Don't get me wrong. It's really, really cool to research and see. A lot of good evidence now. But, what am I going to do with that? Now, something like this information, I can do stuff with this. I can work with this. This I got a hands-on experience with, and I know what to do when I get this information. But like a flat Earth or a dome Earth or a hollow Earth, or we need to get to the North Pole so that we can, what was it? Get to Mount Meru and then whatever. Ain't nobody going to no damn Mount Meru, right? People I know ain't got enough money to fucking go to. What you talking about? Getting on a plane and flying up to the North Pole and shit. Come on now. Keep it real. What was that big craze? Maybe you guys remember it. The blood covenant. What was it? Blood over intent. Y'all remember that? Who did blood over intent? Did anybody get involved with that thing? Come on, we finna get on a plane and fly to the North Pole. I mean, first of all, it's symbolic. Second of all, you not finding no damn North Pole. You not finna do that. There's no internet up there, so that right there means you ain't going. There's no McDonald's, there's no Chick-fil-A, so I'm not going. All right, John, let's be good. But now 144 Magnolia Street. Uh-oh, I got my coffee. Let's continue. Number 6, the 4 sephirot below Tiffareth represent the personality or lower self. Got it? The 4 sephirot below Tiffareth represent the personality or the lower lower self. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the personality, that's the lower self. The 4 sephirot above Tiffareth are the individuality or the higher self. Got it? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. And Kether is the divine spark or the nucleus of manifestation. And that's actually what it takes to cross the abyss. You're not taking your ego, you're not taking your vrittis, your desires, you're not taking your likes and dislikes, you're not taking anything that you have become familiar with. All of that stuff belongs under Tiffareth. You don't even take it past Tiffareth, let alone the abyss. So if you're having any type of vision or spiritual experience that involves something that you're familiar with, it's happening either in the etheric plane or the astral plane. But when you start dealing with stuff that is unfamiliar, and it's very, very, very extremely difficult to translate it into English, you're probably dealing with something that is beyond the solar plane, beyond the astral plane. Beyond the astral plane, it's very difficult to transcribe. Hence why abstract symbology is used. Framestar Films. Peace. Good evening. Laser light. Number 7. Tiffareth, therefore, must never be regarded as an isolated factor, but as a link, focusing point, a center of transition or transmutation. The central pillar is always concerned with consciousness. The 2 side pillars with the different modes of operation of force on the different levels. So look what she said there. The middle pillar is always concerned with consciousness. The other 2 pillars, they're concerned with the modes of operation of force, positive, negative. And also, when thinking about Tiffareth, or any sphere for that matter, but especially Tiffareth, it's not isolated. As a matter of fact, every damn sephirah is connected to Tiffareth. Do you see that? This is the only case where this happens. Hence why everybody loves the Christ. Tiffareth is literally connected to every sephirah. That's kind of a big deal. Because Kether isn't even directly connected to every Sephiroth like that. But Tiffareth has a direct connection to every Sephiroth. Start from the heart, because it's the heart that's connected to everything. Oh, boy. I'll be honest, I was kind of putting this chapter off because it was so long. But I laid down and took a nap and said, when I wake up, we're going to get to it. Number 8. In Tiffareth, we find the archetypal ideals brought to a focus and transmuted into archetypal ideas. It is, in fact, the place of incarnation. For this reason, it is called the child. And because incarnation of the God ideal also implies the sacrificial disincarnation, to Tiffareth are assigned the mysteries of crucifixion. Let me read that again. And because incarnation of the God ideal also implies the sacrificial disincarnation, to Tiffareth are assigned the mysteries of the crucifixion. So look at what she said there. She just explained how Tiffareth is the child and the sacrificed God. Tiffareth is the child because the archetypal ideas that are expressed out of Kether, right? Because Kether is this light of everything, this soul essence, the soul spark, right? The divine spark, the nucleus of manifestation. So anything that is anything ever, even stuff that is not and that we've never encountered, all of that at its core is Kether. There's nothing here that's not Kether. Nothing here that's not Kether. But the thing is, when that spark begins to collect into patterns that we call, say, archetypes, that's why this sphere is associated with the zodiac, because everybody who comes into this world is going to be one of the 12 signs. There's literally no way to bypass that. If you've incarnated into a body, you came in here under a slice of time. Think about that. Nobody is not one of the zodiac signs. So because everybody came here up under an archetype, there are certain qualities and details that individual is very likely to manifest either obviously or subtly. Period. It's not nothing to do with belief. It just is what it is. However, the fact that this archetypal pattern has been put into some kind of form means by default it must be sacrificed. Because all of existence has created patterns, and those patterns have solidified into beginning, middle, and end, there must be an end. There must be. The fact of being born means that it must die. So is it any coincidence that I also pulled the death card for being related to Tiffareth? Because the death card is the 26th path right here. Excuse me, 24th path. That's 4 plus 2, that's 6. And that's where this comes into play. So that's the crucified aspect of this energy. And it is the child because this is where those archetypes become things. This is where ideas become things now. This is where force becomes form now. So all the sacrifice gods are placed here when the tree is applied to the pantheons. So any pantheon you got, whether it is African pantheon or European pantheon or the Marvel universe, any act of sacrifice is going to be related to Tiffareth. Now, I've been talking about the DC movie. What was it? The one I just watched not long ago. The Justice League. In the very beginning, you see the Tiffareth crucifixion. You see it happening. You see that force that became form is now form that became force. The movie opened up with that force being released. That's the first scene in the movie. That force, that form being reconverted into a force. The movie opens up with the crucifixion of the Christ. And what an effect it has on the entire universe. God the Father is just, and not to mention Dragon Ball Z. Every time we lose Goku and then try to collect the balls to wish him back. How many times has Goku been transmuted from form back into force, from force back into form? And remember what was said about this aspect of the card, crossing from both sides of life to death. And what did she call that card? She called that card earned success. Earned success. Earning them Dragon Balls to wish Goku and Krillin back. Because who told Krillin to go out there in the first place, knowing damn well you should have stayed your butt back on Earth. But hey, man, gotta give it to Krillin, though. He gave it all he had every time. He did what he could. Better than Yajirobe and Yamcha. That's the thing, man. Krillin knew. He knew he wasn't prepared to take on that fight. But he did it because he believed in that Tiffareth, or he believed in Goku so much. The same way that Batman wasn't scared to take on no cosmic devouring entity because he knew Superman. What would Superman do? What would Jesus do? This Christ energy can be borrowed the same way that the sun is reflected in the moon, right? Krillin had the strength because he was able to reflect Goku's strength, right? That's just as potent, just as potent. A full moon can light up the night. Hell, at one point, Vegeta's life was in Krillin's hands. Don't forget it now. Nuru says Shakti is just Shiva turned inside out, like a diaphragm that pops from concave to convex. Prakriti is just Purusha turned inside out. Light is just Shiva, Brahman, dark charge turned inside out, radiant. Love and be. Peace. Back in the booth. Peace. Sunshine Chick says, even on vacation, I'm tuning in. Yes, ma'am. It's not a proper reading session if you're not here. Oy vey. Alright guys, so it looks like the likes on this video don't equal the amount of people here. So if you've been here for the past hour and a half, or even any amount of time, you haven't hit that like button. Come on, if you like this video, obviously you like it because you're still here. Hit the like button. It helps the algorithm sort my videos into the good pile, not the ignore pile. Which, I get it. This type of content doesn't suit the taste of the mainstream, and that's okay. But there's a few of us out there who would be able to find this type of thing relevant. So hit the like button. All right, so let's keep going. Number 9, exoteric religion goes no farther up the tree than Tiffareth. I had to highlight that. Exoteric religion, which is mainstream religion, right? The stuff that all the people you know are into, whether it's Christianity or Islam or Judaism. Exoteric religion goes no farther up the tree than Tiffareth. That's where they stop. That's where they stop. It has no understanding of the mysteries of creation as represented by the symbolism of Kether, Chakma, and Bina, nor of the modes of operation of the dark and bright archangels as represented in the symbolism of Gibura and Gijala, nor the mysteries of consciousness and the transmutation of force as represented in the invisible sephirah, Doth, which has no symbolism. She ain't trying to give you nothing to work with Doth. The unfortunate trying to look out for y'all. And in a way, she is right. There is no symbolism for Doth, but Doth, that's because Doth is not objective. It's purely subjective, which means that you have to read between the lines to catch the symbolism of Doth. Much like Kether. Exactly like Kether, actually. 10. In Tiffareth, God is made manifest in form and dwells among us. What's that mean? King riding amongst the peoples. The giver dwelling amongst the peoples. The ferryman who crosses life and death amongst the people. These aren't regular folks. These are folks who have connection to the other side, right? But they look like us. Avatars, right? This is what Superman was Clark Kent. Goku was just like everybody else. These Christ figures, they look like the rest of the squad, dwelling amongst the people. Keep that in mind. So she says, Tiffareth is the God made manifest in form and dwells among us, i.e., it comes within the range of human consciousness. That's what that really means. When they said that Christ walked among us, dwelled among us, what that actually means is this type of algorithm is within the range of human consciousness. So honestly, anybody who has a desire to connect with spirit, they can touch this plane of existence. They have the opportunity to touch this plane of existence. That's why a person may not be very deep at all, and they may not be very spiritual at all, but everyone has an idea of Jesus, right? Everyone can reach out and touch an idea of a Christ or a Savior. Scare somebody one good time and listen to the first thing that comes out of their mouth. Christ! Jesus Christ! Oh Lord! Jesus fucking Christ, man! Jesus, Mary and Joseph. Tiffareth, the son, shows us Kether, the father. 11. In order that form may be stabilized, the component forces out of which it is built must be brought into equilibrium. Therefore, do we find the idea of mediator or redeemer. Let me read that again, because we're talking about the balancing aspect now. We're talking about the sattvic aspect. We're talking about Vishnu. We're talking about Krishna, right? The sattvic aspect. And remember, he's got the scales right there. Justice is also one of the paths connected to Tiffareth. Also, death can be seen as a great mediator, the balancer. So can karma and addiction and madness. And that also includes the madness of lust, right? You ever been in the zone so much that you couldn't think about anything else and you couldn't turn it off? Mediation right here as well. And of course, obviously, all of these different cards are related to Tiffareth in one way or another. So again, in order that form may be stabilized, because before it was stabilized, it was volatile, right? In order that form may be stabilized, the component forces out of which it is built, the gunas, right? The three gunas, must be brought into equilibrium. Therefore, do we find the idea of mediator or redeemer inherent in the sephirot. When the Godhead, its very self, manifests in form, that form must be perfectly equilibrated. One might, with equal truth, reverse the proposition and say that when the forces building a form are perfectly equilibrated, the Godhead, its very self, is manifesting in that form according to its type. She just gave y'all the formula of how to invoke the Christ energy. God is made manifest among us when the conditions permit of manifestation. Boom. Boom. Put a little circle next to verse 11 because that's a key. If you got this physical book, go ahead and put a circle right there. Go ahead and put a little star or maybe a little sun, but that's something that should be meditated on. When a higher algorithm, a higher archetype, when a God force manifests into a form, that form must be perfectly equilibrated, perfectly balanced. And likewise, when the forces are perfectly balanced and equilibrated, the God force begins to manifest in the physical plane. So basically, under the right conditions, you can channel down any type of force. Doesn't it make sense? When the conditions are just right for mold and fungus to develop, when the conditions are just right for roaches to pop up, when the condition is just right for a beer belly to start to form, it starts to form, right? Ezreal Walker says, I'm PDF Poppy. Well, if you're PDF Poppy, at least maybe make a note to remember that verse right there. You know, maybe scribble it down or highlight it or screenshot it or whatever you got to do. Because this is one of those lines, and there's going to be quite a few lines in this chapter that one could benefit from an extended contemplation. Matter of fact, 15 is another one of them. Let's continue. Number 12. Having come through into manifestation on the planes of form in the child aspect of Tiffareth, the incarnated God grows to manhood and becomes the Redeemer. In other words, having obtained incarnation by means of matter in a virgin state. Oh, did we just get to the virgin birth? Is that what that is? Let me read that again. Having come through into manifestation on the planes of form in the child aspect of Tiffareth, the incarnated God grows to manhood and becomes the Redeemer. In other words, having obtained incarnation by means of matter in a virgin state, i.e., Mary, Mara, the sea, the Great Mother, Bina, a supernal, as distinguished from the inferior mother, Malkuth, the developing God manifestation, is forever striving to bring the kingdom of the six central sephirah into a state of equilibrium. Born of a virgin. So we're talking about a thing or a no thing, not being born out of the dust and dirt of Malkuth, but being born out of pure, untainted matter from Bina, across the abyss. This is something that has been channeled straight from the heavens. Man. Oh boy. Oh boy. 13. When the glyph of the fall is represented. Ooh. Now I know that sometimes these verses line up with the tarot cards. This is the energy of 13 right here. XIII 13, death. Look what she says in verse 13. When the glyph of the fall is represented upon the tree, it is interesting to note that the heads of the great serpent that rises out of chaos only comes as far as Doth and do not overpass it. You guys have seen a picture in previous chapters. I've shown it from the Big Golden Dawn book, and it shows the tree of life with all the serpents coming up, and the heads are in each sphere, but they stop at Doth. They don't pass Doth. Because underneath Doth is an independent dimension. Every other dimension and every other reality that can possibly exist, they all connect at Doth. So in other words, a very accurate depiction of this tree could be this upper triad, and see all this stuff down here. You could have multiple versions of this coming out of here. So you'd have multiple versions of this coming out of the abyss. But once you get to this singularity in Doth, there's only one great supernal, but many different manifested universes and dimensions, many of which have nothing to do with the ones that we exist in, right? Some may even be slightly similar, but most of them are not. The same way that we talked in the beginning of this video about all the notes in between C and C sharp, and all the colors in between red and orange, infinite colors. Well, there's infinite alternate realities. There's a reality where what happens this very second will be different from what happened in the last second. And it continues like that. And each of them have a different trajectory. And most of them have nothing to do with what you've got going on right now. But at this point right here, all the different realities resolve into one. So the reason I said that is because when you see a glyph like that with those serpents that are rising up out of chaos, the Qliphoth, and consuming matter, it doesn't go past the Doth point. Because those things are not, how do I say this? They may have come from the divine spark, but they are aspects of reality that has been discarded. So they don't return to the divine spark. I don't have that book on me right now, so I can't grab that picture, but I believe you remember which one I'm talking about. Nehru says, Doth is a turning inside out of your light, from radiance folding in on itself to a 0 point. Death is just a compression of light event. Doth is a rendering device, like a 3D printer extruder. Hell yeah. A 3D printer. Nehru says, mediation and lucid sleep is good practice for getting through the singularity compression event of death, like a long holding samadhi, deep meditation, or lucid dream. You hold and direct your plasma light. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. As a matter of fact, it is quite difficult to do any work with Doth if there isn't some level of lucid dreaming or long held trance, I'll say. I mentioned that I have the benefit and the blessing of being able to be in trance for an extended amount of time to do this kind of work. And Amali says, whoa, deja vu. It's been happening a lot. I think twice in this very same video. Framestar Film says, interesting to contemplate that Dion Fortune conceived of or received the information for cosmic doctrine, and then around 10 years later came mystical Qabalah. She documented the birth and growth of the triple blackness, and then the birth and growth of the tree a decade apart. Man, they sleeping on Dion Fortune. Sleeping. Nuru says every metaphysical system is just a secreted or occulted formula for how to travel eternally as conscious, coherent light, and not to be scattered at Doth. Yes, 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 that right there. That right there. Matter of fact, I'll screenshot that. That's what it is. That's what it is. Every metaphysical system is just a secret or occult formula for how to travel eternally as conscious, coherent light and not be scattered at Doth. I wonder if most people will make it past the 30-second path, let alone Doth. Sheesh. All right, let's keep going. 14. And also those serpents that don't pass Doth. I mean, it's not just like some alien creatures that have come to corrupt reality. This is also talking about your individual consciousness becoming those things and becoming so engrossed and attached within matter that what you have identified with will be obliterated by the time you get to that Doth point. So it's not that these are necessarily just an outside force. It's also you becoming that and identifying with that. It was discarded for a reason. So if you become identified with what was discarded, man, I think that's another reason why she recommended not to maybe not to mess with that tree, with that dark side tree so much. But it is what it is. All right. 14. The Redeemer then manifests in Tiffareth and is forever striving to redeem his kingdom by reuniting it to the supernals. What in the world? The Redeemer then manifests in Tiffareth and is forever striving to redeem his kingdom by reuniting it to the supernals across the gulf made by the fall, which separated the lower sephirot from the higher, and by bringing the diverse forces of the sixfold kingdom into equilibrium. To this end are the incarnated gods sacrificed. This is why they must die. Yeah, Micah says the bot ain't gonna make it through. True indeed. So again, 15. To this end, right? Taking this kingdom and reuniting the kingdom back across the gulf, back across the abyss. Because remember what she said earlier. This is the king in its kingdom, in his kingdom, the kingdom of matter, the kingdom of form. This harmonizing aspect of the Christ figure isn't here to be worshipped and have his feet kissed all day. That's not what he's here for. He's here to bring balance to the force, bring balance to the form, right? To bring harmony to the manifest dimension. Why? So that the manifest dimension can find what it is that actually does make it across here. Just imagine for a minute if Christ did return and taught the people how to live properly and to find their inner selves. And then all the people of the planet became enlightened and were all able to transcend back across the abyss. Wouldn't that be sweet? Wouldn't that be sweet? If Christ actually came back and people actually listened, paid attention. Or Buddha, or some awesome Swami, or some occultist, or whatever. Imagine if these people actually show up and the people that they're teaching actually listen and begin to transform themselves. Then the job of the Christ figure would be done. So to this end are the incarnated gods sacrificed, dying for the people, in order that the tremendous emotional force set free by this act may compensate the unbalanced force of the kingdom and thus redeem it or bring it into equilibrium. He died for our sins. Me and my cousin had a good laugh the other day because we're like, if you were to ask a Christian, he died up on the cross. One day when I was lost, he died up on the cross. Well, what does that mean? What does that mean? He died for your sins. What does that mean? I don't think that most people could answer that. I don't think most people could give a good cohesive answer because it's just something that was force fed to you and you repeat it. Well, he died for my sins. How? In what way? How does that make sense? I don't think that most people would be able to explain that in a way that makes sense. But if you look here at what she said, to this end are the incarnated gods sacrificed, dying for the people, in order that the tremendous emotional force set free by this act may compensate the unbalanced force of the kingdom and thus redeem it or bring it into equilibrium. The slaying and the death of a perfect soul will serve to cause balance and harmony in an imperfect world. That's what that story is about. I lost about 10 viewers on that one. I guess they were trying to figure out what it means for Christ to die for their sins. I put a circle next to that. I'd probably contemplate that as well. Big deal, especially if you went many years believing, oh, Jesus died for my sins. I didn't say he didn't. What I am saying is, do you know what that means? Do you think that some man 2,000 years ago was brutally tortured and beat to death because you wanted to look at some porn? Does that even make sense? Like, does your definition of he died for my sin, does that even make sense? Or because you stole something out of Walmart, you stole something out of Walmart, man had to sit up on a cross and get brutally tortured to death because you stole some chicken out the darn meat section of Walmart? That sucks. But there's a deeper esoteric meaning to this. Greetings, Veronica. Brahmacharya says, for a while, and I still do, think that Jesus is the Christos, or sacred secretion, that Santos Bonacci teaches about. And whatever you believe, make sure you know what that means. Make sure you know what that means. Because if you don't, then you don't. I'm not here to tear down anyone's beliefs, but I would definitely love to make sure and check that you know what you believe. You's a big fine woman. Won't you back that thing up? back that thing up. Whatever it is you believe, can you back that thing up? Won't you back that thing up? Girl, who was you playing with? Back that thing up. Saigon, peace. Jesus died for my sins. What sins? Well, I stole some ham out the Walmart meat section, and I grabbed that candy bar off the shelf and I didn't pay for it. So Jesus had to be put to death for that. I cussed out somebody's grandma once and I didn't feel bad about it. So you gonna let a man die for that? Brahmacharya says that's the thing. Can one truly know? You're right. Absolutely. Absolutely you can truly know. Because if you don't know, I mean, you gotta know something, right? Belief isn't simply taking some words and then agreeing with it. Belief is confirmation. Because if there's no confirmation, it's not really a belief. It's not really, it's because see, a belief is deeply rooted. A belief is so deeply rooted that it has a very real effect on your day-to-day reality. For example, I believe that, what do I believe? I believe that if I lay down and go to sleep, I will wake up rejuvenated. So if I start feeling tired, my brain starts thinking, well, hey, let's access that belief of sleep. Now, I don't simply believe that because someone told me. I believe that because I've experienced and confirmed many times that if I lay down and rest, I'll wake up with a little bit more energy. So when I speak of beliefs and beliefs are generally something that we have a confirmation of at a deep level. That's what accurately and truly makes a belief. But then there are concepts and different things that we hold in our mind, we hold in our ego, but we don't have confirmation of them. And those are different things that can actually be changed easily. Those can be changed easily. So unless there's confirmation of these concepts, it isn't technically a belief. What's that stand for? Men in Black. Here come the men in black. Men in black. Galaxy Defender. They won't let you remember. Nah, the good guys dress in black. Remember that, just in case we ever face to face and make contact. The title held by me, MIB, means what you think you saw, you did not see. So don't blink, think what was there. Nehru says light becomes matter. So at death, consider your strongest held thought, feelings, knowings is what is rendered or extruded at death. So the only way to cross is be and desire no thing, just consciousness. And isn't that what the good Swamis teach? Brahmacharya says, I'll let you know when I personally experience the Christ consciousness. Other than that, I know from my research that it exists as the seed in man waiting to be pushed upwards. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I wonder which experiments you'll choose to try to start to gain confirmation so that belief becomes reality. And then it becomes the gift that keeps on giving. Galaxy Defenders. Because isn't that the sun? Isn't that the Tiffareth? Isn't that the Christ energy? The gift that continues to give of itself. The sun literally, well, so they say, literally burns itself off just to feed this solar system. Everything we have here is made of the sun. Everything that we have ever experienced and ever will experience, and everything that anyone has ever experienced is made of light, made of the sun. is Tiffareth, which connects all things. Just like the sun. 16. It is this sphere on the tree that is called the Christ Center, and it is here that the Christian religion has its focusing point. The pantheistic faiths, such as the Greek and Egyptian, center in Yesod, and the metaphysical faiths, such as Buddhist and Confucian, aim at Kether. But all the religions worthy of the name have both an esoteric or mystical and an exoteric or pantheist aspect. Christianity, although it is essentially a Tiffareth faith, has its mystical aspect centering in Kether, and its magical aspect, as seen in popular continental Catholicism, centering in Yesod. Ooh, typo. It is evangelical aspect. Its evangelical aspect aims at a concentration on Tiffareth as child and sacrifice God, and ignores the aspect of the king in the center of his kingdom, surrounded by the 5 holy sephirot in manifestation. 17. Hitherto, we have considered the tree from the macrocosmic point of view, seeing the different archetypes of manifesting force come into action and build the universe, and have but remotely approached them from the microcosmic point of view in their psychological aspect as factors in consciousness. But with Tiffareth, our mode of approach changes, for from henceforward the archetypal forces are locked up in forms and can only be approached from the point of view of their effect upon consciousness. Very important. In other words, our mode of approach must now be through the direct experience of the senses, though these senses are not of the physical plane only, but function in both Tiffareth and Yesod, each according to type. While we were on the higher levels, we had to rely on metaphysical analogy and reasoning by deduction from first principles, right? Now we are within the legitimate field of inductive science, and must submit ourselves to its discipline and express our findings in its terms. But at the same time, we must maintain our link with the transcendentals through Tiffareth. This is achieved by expressing the symbolism of Tiffareth in terms of metaphysical experience. All mystical experiences of the type in which the vision ends in blinding light are assigned to Tiffareth. For the fading out of form and the overwhelming influx of force characterizes the transitional mode of consciousness of this sphere on the tree. Visions which maintain clearly outlined form throughout are characteristic of Yesod. Illuminations which have no form, such as those described by Plotinus, are rising towards Kether. Very important, very key. And I've described that many times in many different ways. There was a time where I was saying things like, once you get past the point of Hod, you're not going to have very many visuals. Things are going to be more abstract and pretty much pure color. I've also mentioned that we use the etheric plane, which is associated by Yesod, to navigate through the astral plane, which is characterized by Tiffareth. Now, the astral plane is largely described as abstract and full of raw color, strange colors also. And those are not colors that are seen with the eye, but are seen with the clairvoyant eye, the imagination. So really the astral plane and the things happening in Tiffareth are behind what is experienced in the imagination and the etheric plane. Visions which maintain clearly outlined form throughout are characteristic of Yesod. That's the etheric plane. So if you can see it and it's got a form and it's got shape and it makes sense to you, that's Yesod. That's here. But when stuff starts getting to the point where it doesn't make logical sense, now you might still be able to feel it, or maybe even have difficulty translating it into words, right? Like I said before, now you're starting to get past Tiffareth and up that tree. But I keep saying key phrases like most people don't go past the 30-second path. Most people don't do any work past Yasad. Confirmed. Coop the villain. Peace. Straight Panther says, guess I've been Yasad plenty of times. Oh yeah. That's what we all do every single day. We all utilize the function of Yasad every single day. It's part of being human. Every time we daydream, every time we creatively visualize, when we make plans, when you're in the shower and you're thinking about what you're gonna eat for dinner and do tomorrow, like all that stuff is happening in the etheric plane. So you're absolutely right. But the reason that she's making this distinction and I'm making this point is because most people confuse that with astral projection or working in higher planes or whatever. Framestar Film says, is our programming the collective memory of the abyss? Yet there is a spark that tells us there's something more beyond, not yet reached. Yes. The collective memory of the abyss. Number 18. In Tiffareth also are gathered up and interpreted the operations of the nature magic of Netzach and the hermetic magic of Hod. Both of these operations are in terms of form, though form predominates in the operation of Hod to a greater degree than in those of Netzach. So there's more distinguished form in Hod than there is in Netzach. All the astral visions of Yasad also must be translated into terms of metaphysics via the mystical experiences of Tiffareth. If this translation is not made, we become hallucinated, for we think the reflections cast into the mirror of the subconscious mind and translated there into terms of brain consciousness are the actual things of which they are really only the symbolic representations. Very key. Very key. Why is that very key? Because, as I just said, we deal with the etheric plane on a regular basis. We all have imagination and we daydream and we think about scenarios in our heads and stuff like that. Now, there's active imagination and there's passive imagination. But the thing is, they're on the same level. They're still in the etheric plane. So when you receive passive imagination, it's stimulated by the subconscious mind. Now, the passive imagination is closer to the astral plane. It is. But look what she said. When the astral visions of Yasad, they must be translated into terms of metaphysics through the mystical experiences of Tiffareth. What that means is, when you receive those passive visualizations and you start to think that, oh, I'm in the higher planes now, it becomes so easy to get confused, which most people are. Because you see what you see and you think that it's actually what you're seeing. You're forgetting that when you receive that passive information from the astral to the etheric, you're forgetting that it's being recombined into a symbolic representation. So what you receive from your passive visualizations is being reprocessed into something that makes sense for you. Remember what she just said. In the astral plane and beyond, things are not making sense. It's not what you're used to. So what the subconscious mind does is it gathers up symbols that you are familiar with. And it uses those symbols to present to you that which you could not interpret before. In other words, it's automatic translate. The etheric plane, when used in its negative aspect, in its receptive aspect, it's auto translate. So when you receive information from the astral plane or the mental plane or from the abyss, the subconscious mind has no choice but to create it into something you're familiar with. For example, when we first opened up this video, MC Maestro was talking about how he had a dream of he had to become Batman Beyond, and there was something to do with an oil refinery. Now, if he took that dream literally, he might be saying, oh, well, I am going to be the next Batman and I'm going to get rich off of oil. I don't know. But I said, what's the metaphor? Because when you start to break down the symbology, you get a glimpse of what you're actually being communicated. But the problem that most people make is what Dion Fortune says: we become hallucinated, for we think the reflections cast into the mirror of the subconscious mind and then translated there into terms of brain consciousness are the actual things, which they really are only the symbolic representation. So what you're seeing in that mirror, it's only a symbolic representation. You got to know that. And again, this is what makes the 30-second path the limit. The limit, because most people don't understand this. Check. Well, maybe. Maybe. Number 19. Kether is metaphysical. Yesod is psychic. And Tiffareth is essentially mystical. Mystical being understood as a mode of mentation in which consciousness ceases to work in symbolic subconscious representations, but apprehends by means of emotional reactions. See, the astral plane is made of emotional substance. Emotional substance. Let me read this again. Kether is metaphysical. Yesod is psychic. But Tiffareth is essentially mystical. Mystical being understood as a mode of mentation in which consciousness ceases to work in symbolic subconscious representations, right? No more symbols, but apprehends by means of emotional reactions. You gotta catch this stuff. You gotta catch this stuff to be able to distinguish what you encounter. 20. The different additional titles and symbolism assigned to the various sephiroth, and especially the gods thereof, give us a very important key for unlocking the mysteries of the Bible, which is essentially a Kabbalistic book. According to the manner in which deity is referred to, we know to what sphere on the tree the particular mode of manifestation should be assigned. All references to the Son always refer to Tiffareth. All references to the Father refer to Kether. All references to the Holy Ghost refer to Yesod. And very deep mysteries are concealed here. For the Holy Ghost is the aspect of the Godhead that is worshipped in the occult lodges. The worship of pantheistic nature forces and elemental operations take place under the presidency of God the Father. And the regenerative ethical aspect of religion, which is the exoteric aspect for this epoch, is under the presidency of the God of the Son and Tiffareth. So look, don't get mad at these people for worshiping what they worship. Let them do what they got to do, because that's their personal connection to either Kether, Tiffareth, or Yesod. The same way that you require a personal connection to Kether, Tiffareth, and Yesod. Or in my case, Doth, Yesod, Tiffareth. If you notice, Princess Celestia has a cutie mark of the sun. So I use her for my Tiffareth symbolism. Miss Bud Stallion here is symbolic of the moon. And then, of course, Miss Queen here represents Doth and the Abyss. That's how I do it. You gotta do it your way. Give me one of them hot dogs. Give me one of them. Nuru says, our sun is a baby black hole which becomes a seeder of stars, a womb, a portal, and a transformer of galactic light, magnetic fields, into a language visible light, which fractally condenses as our DNA. And I would even say the DNA of everything else. that's a good one. MC Maestro says Zombie Strange needed a body to go back and fight Wanda and brought the Doth Mud with him. Look, man, we got these occult principles in all these movies. And we might not understand the occult, but when we see it, we're like, oh, that's cool. Hell yeah. So now I might have to get me a Zombie Strange. He literally had to take on form of the dead, shades of the dead. He had to become one of the dead. Man, oh my God. Oh my God. That's great. That's great. Yeah, I got to get me Zombie Strange now. Thanks for pointing that out. Whew. Good stuff. Very good stuff. 21. The initiate, however, transcends his epoch and aims at uniting all three modes of adoration in his worship of deity as a trinity in unity. The Son redeeming the pantheistic nature worship from debasement and making the transcendental Father comprehensible to human consciousness. For who hath seen me hath seen the Father. Let me read that again. The initiate, however, transcends his epoch. Because remember what she said. The regenerative ethical aspect of religion, which is the exoteric aspect for this epoch, is under the presidency of God, the Son, and Tiffareth. In other words, this age that we're currently in, we need Tiffareth for our evolution. That's why everyone is so focused on Christ as a spiritual connection, right? Or a Christ figure. That's what we are unconsciously manifesting right now, because for our balance and our harmony, that's what we need. Now, in the past, people were more focused on Kether aspect and Yasod aspects, right? Whether it was Greek, Egyptian, Buddhist, Samkhya and yoga, you know what I'm saying? Like, think about it. We've studied Samkhya, we've studied yoga and Tantra. They're not worried about no Christ figure. They're not worried about Christ figure because the age and time period that science was created, Tiffareth wasn't what they needed. Kether is what they needed. So they were focused on Kether and how to reach Kether, how to transcend, how to become liberated, how to go beyond, right? But see, right now in the age that we're currently in and the epoch that we're currently in, these people ain't worried about that. We need our sins forgiven. We go into church. Or it's Muhammad or whoever. Or hell, it's a celebrity, right? It's it's Farrakhan. It's who else do people worship? Some figure that represents an archetype or a concept, and people are like, yeah, that's my guy or that's my girl. And it's that's a characteristic of this age. So it's nothing, I'm not talking down on anybody. But this is what the typical human in today's age is looking for, is seeking the savior of some type. We're all looking, or already have at this point, a savior. But what she says here is the initiate, the occultist, right? We transcend the epoch. So we're in the world, but we're not of the world. Everybody out here needs the savior. But honestly, I'm looking past Tiffareth, right? The initiate transcends his epoch and aims at uniting all three modes of... and by the way, there's another time period and group of people who are looking for Yasod and looking for the connection to Kether through Yasod, right? But yeah, like she says here, the initiate right now aims at uniting all three modes of adoration in his worship of deity as a trinity in unity, right? So we're using Yasod and Tiffareth and Kether, or in my case right now, Doth. When you're working with the tree, one of the formulas is Doth and Kether cannot exist at the same time. It's one or the other. So in this case, I've got a Doth representation for what I'm doing. Do you. Don't do what I'm doing. Do you. Nehru says that's why all systems teach the way out Full ascension can only be found deep inside. So the initiate, however, transcends his epoch and aims at uniting all three modes of adoration in his worship of deity as a trinity in unity, the Son redeeming the pantheistic nature worship from debasement and making the transcendental Father comprehensible to human consciousness. For whoso hath seen me hath seen the Father. For those of you in my Shadowwork Mastery System class, the next section that is going up related to the map, related to memory and the unconscious mind, is going to be about understanding the difference between matter and these transcendental things. First and foremost, the main point is if you don't have a symbolic representation of higher concepts, you don't have a connection to higher concepts. Think about that. Ask somebody, do they believe in God? Oh, I don't know. I think so. Maybe. Oh, you know what I'm saying? There's some like weird general answer. But how can you have a relationship with God and you don't even have a concept of God? That don't even make sense. At least these Christians have an idea of Christ, of Jesus. They have something that they can connect to and pull on. So if you don't have that, let alone having a concept of anything beyond, right? Do you have a concept of Gibra, of Chesed, of Kether? Do you have any concept of something higher than you to be able to pull on and to have your mind focus on to tap into that algorithm? How can I talk about doing a prosperity ritual or magic dealing with success and I don't have any symbols of success in my life? I don't even know what it looks like. I don't even know what success looks like. So how am I doing success money rituals, right? In order to work with something, the mind needs something to hold on to. You dig? Whoso hath seen me hath seen the Father. 22. 22 paths. Tiffareth, however, is not only the center of the sacrifice God, but also the center of the inebriating God, the giver of illumination. Ooh. I mentioned earlier about working with the clip-off that one has to kind of lose their mind in order to come to their senses. You gotta lose your mind. You gotta go onto the brink of madness in order to receive illumination. Because illumination is not to be found in everyday okie doke trance. There's a different kind of trance that has to be linked into. So Tiffareth is associated with the inebriating God, the giver of illumination. Dionysus is assigned to this center as well as Osiris. For as we have already seen, the central pillar is concerned with the modes of consciousness. And human consciousness, rising from Yesod by the path of the arrow, receives illumination in Tiffareth. Receives illumination in Tiffareth. Therefore, all the givers of illumination in the pantheons are assigned to Tiffareth. All the givers of illumination. Dispeller of darkness, light bringer, right? So here's where you're going to find the connection between Lucifer and Jesus. 23. Now I had to highlight and circle and all that. So pay attention to this verse. Illumination consists in the introduction of the mind to a higher mode of consciousness than that which is built up out of sensory experience. Check that out. You've got a certain mind that is built up out of sensory experience, y'all. Now, if we were to go to Samkhya and the yoga stuff, we would see that that's called manas. That's the lower mind, manas. It's built out of your five senses. Now, for the majority of people that walk around here, that's the extent of their experience. That's the most that they know, right? So check this out. Illumination consists in the introduction of the mind to a higher mode of consciousness than that which is built up out of sensory experience. That's what illumination is. Being introduced to something that is greater than your five senses. Illumination, the illuminator, whether it's Christ or Lucifer, nothing to do with good or bad, but coming into an experience of something bigger than what you know. If you're used to everyday life just being plain and simple and basic, and I make all my judgments based off of what I smell, taste, touch, hear, see, feel, that's one reality. But then actually being introduced to something bigger than that, oh, life changing. You've just received some illumination. Now, not ultimate illumination, but illumination past where you originally were. So check this out. Let's continue. Because every line of this paragraph is fire, hot heat. In illumination, the mind changes gear. As Anamali just says, the gears are turning, but the lights aren't always on. In illumination, the mind changes gear, as it were. Unless, however, the new mode of consciousness is connected up with the old and translated into terms of finite thought, it remains as a flash of light, so brilliant that it blinds. And I think everybody who has done psychedelics or had an awesome dream has experienced this. You might wake up from a dream and all you remember is that the dream was fucking awesome, but you can't remember any details. That's because when you visit the astral plane like that, it's made of a substance that is it's made of a substance that is different from your everyday life. So your everyday life, like we said here, is recorded by the language of the five senses. So if the five senses was like a keyboard, your everyday experience, you're typing up data with that keyboard. But when you visit the astral plane, it's made of a different substance. When you go to this astral plane, or you have these extreme dreams, that's not made out of your five senses. That's made out of something else. So when you try to recall what you just experienced, it's going to be extremely difficult because it's literally in a different language. And likewise, like what I just said, when you're trying to get in contact with these forces, you've got to have some type of symbolic connection, that you're able to grasp a hold of so that you can work with it. That's why these cards work so well. And that's really the science of working with servitors and spirits. Using them as symbols to connect with something that is deeper than just your everyday five sense reality. So one more time. Unless, however, the new mode of consciousness is connected up with the old and translated into terms of finite thought, unless you're able to translate it and break it down and connect it to something that you're used to, like I said, you've got to build your own tree. It remains a flash of light so brilliant that it blinds. So it'll just be an awesome experience that felt really cool, but you have no way of holding on to it. Check this out. We do not see by means of the ray of light that shines upon us, but by means of the amount of that ray which is reflected from objects of our own dimension upon which it lights. Come on, y'all. That is a hard verse right there. That's a hard line right there. That sentence right there. We do not see by means of the ray of light that shines upon us. No. We see by the means of the amount of that ray which is reflected from objects of our own dimension upon which it lights. By the